But he approached us with 2 other people. And again, like I said, when there's a team of people that come up to you, you know something's going on. So we were sitting there, and then he turns to us and he says, "Can we see you in the conference room?" And so, you know, I had this huge lump in my throat as we were walking down there. And then they bring us to this conference room, and it's this gigantic table. And then it's only us 4 or 5. Yeah, 5. 5. At the very end of this huge table.
Yeah.
And they look at us, and then, you know, I'm like, okay, we're going to hear news that will probably change the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
That is where we left off our last episode. Parents Colton and Katie are ushered into a conference room by a team of people to hear about how their future with their little girl will change. They paint a vivid picture that is difficult to imagine. My name is Seth Carnell, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. Before we begin, if you aren't familiar with Go Shout Love, we do amazing things for amazing families with kids on rare medical journeys. And each month, we shout love for families through the sale of creative apparel inspired by the kiddos. This month's We Are What We Roar design is inspired by Shiloh from San Diego, California. Shiloh is a sweet 11-month-old girl who has Cri Du Chat syndrome, also known as 5P- syndrome. She is strong, resilient, and joyful, and she teaches us the power of perseverance. Now, one of the ways we shout love is also by allowing these parents to share their journey with us, and then all of you listeners. One piece of feedback we often get from these families is how unexpectedly therapeutic sharing their story on this podcast was. They are stories that need to be shared and deserve to be shared. There is a lot of emotion and growth that surround these situations, and quite often, you feel that in these conversations. In today's episode, you will find out how educated parents get on their child's medical condition. When we talk to them, they sound like experts, and that makes perfect sense. They are living in it. Colton and Katie have a lot to share about Cri Du Chat, even about the origin of the name. It really is fascinating. They also tell about how life has changed. There obviously has been some adjustments, both logistically as well as relationally and emotionally. We are very grateful to Colton and Katie for sharing their time and sharing their hearts with us. Leading this conversation is Josh Veach, one of the co-directors of Go Shout Love. You will hear Shiloh playing in the background. I know you can only hear it, but I promise, watching it, it was adorable. Now, this is part 2 of the conversation with Colton and Katie. The previous episode is available, and I would highly recommend starting there if you haven't heard it yet. Now, to begin, here's Colton picking up where we left off. Remember, they have just been brought into a large room and are about to receive news. So, here we go.
Oh, yeah. We were sitting in there. He kind of got like his serious tone on, you know, and was just like, well, we got the results back. What it looks like is I don't remember even, you know, how he phrased it, but pretty much he just said, she has a deletion on the fifth arm of on the short arm of the 5th chromosome. And, that leads to a syndrome called Cri Du Chat syndrome, also like more commonly known as, 5P- syndrome. And, then he kind of just went through the list of kind of common issues that kids with this syndrome might find and deal with. You know, like we have kind of talked about intellectual delays, physical delays, breathing issues, and everything, which kind of helped open up a lot of answers to the issues that she had in the NICU, and we just had no clue what they were. And So that was just kind of, a huge shock for us. We didn't know what to expect, but obviously we weren't expecting anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was just a whole moment, that they kind of just gave us some time in the room together alone where we just cried, prayed, and just kind of tried to wrap our heads around the whole thing as best as we could in the moment,
So your fears were confirmed. They told you this information that they made clear was definitely going to be a lifelong thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what prognosis did they give and expectation? How did they set the expectations for what Shiloh's life might look like from that day forward?
So we had a really awesome geneticist and genetic counselor, and I know a lot of people have had negative experiences with their, with getting news like this. We had a really positive one, even though it was extremely hard to hear. They phrased everything like she will have challenges or she may not. Like, they never said cut and dry, she's never going to walk, but they did delve into it and, here are some challenges that come along with it. And when you hear those, it's so hard to hear.
Yeah. So, he was great. He just kind of gave us all the problems they laid it out well, that it's a spectrum like most genetic disorders. There's some kids who may never walk, talk, or anything like that. And then there's others who, do all of those things. They're able to live on their own, go have pretty normal lives. And so, he gave us the whole spiel of, you don't know what to expect. Every child is going to be different, but the great news is that almost all of them live full lives, just
if they get past the age of 1.
Yeah. But which a majority do. And, you can expect a normal life expectancy once you reach that point. But yeah, I don't know.
The name Cri Du Chat, am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Is unique. Tell us about kind of what you've learned. Like, what's the history behind that name?
So it means cry of the cat.
In French.
The wonderful man that discovered Cri Du Chat, he also, I think, discovered Down syndrome. His name is Lejeune, and so he's French, obviously. And he was a huge advocate for kids with disabilities, a gigantic advocate, both prenatally and afterwards. But yeah, it's a French name, Cry the cat, and it's funny because they used to call her Cry. They used to be like, "Oh, she's a little kitten."
When we were in Waco.
Yeah, in the first NICU, because her cry sounds like a kitten.
And that's
extremely
why
high
the
pitched.
name is that.
Yeah.
The nurses and doctors in Waco, in the smaller hospital, were picking up on a symptom without realizing they were picking up on a symptom.
Exactly. And we were like, oh yeah, totally. It sounds like a cat. And it made so much sense after getting her syndrome.
Exactly.
You've mentioned previously that, specifically around the diagnosis of Cri Du Chat, that there's a lot of misinformation or maybe information that's outdated.
Definitely.
Having gone through the diagnosis and, a few months now into this journey, what would you want people to know about this diagnosis specifically?
It's not a death sentence. I was super saddened to see, I went back on the sites that I had gone on during my pregnancy, and I could not find a single woman that kept her pregnancy that had a baby with Cri Du Chat.
So it's common for it to be, it can be common for it to be diagnosed during the pregnancy.
Correct.
Yes. And the reason I failed to mention this, that it wasn't during my panorama test, is because the specialist forgot to mark to test for microdeletions.
Okay.
And that is why it did not come up. I called her later on and confirmed that. But yes, you can find out during pregnancy. I'm actually talking to a woman right now that is pregnant with a little baby with Cri Du Chat. And there's a lot of information out there that kind of makes it seem like this diagnosis is not compatible with life. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case at all. I mean, most people with Cri Du Chat live full lives. Mm-hmm. And yes, there will be challenges, but their lives are of so much worth. Mm. And I just want to get that point across, just because I feel like that's a huge thing that's out there right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not true. They live full, happy, meaningful lives, and enrich their families so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the issue, like when looking it up on the internet, on Google or whatever, all the things that come up at first are going to be like studies that were done, maybe like decades ago or something, mm-hmm. that they don't have the same kind of knowledge that we do now. And then, that's what comes up first. So that's what you click on and kind of read through, and they say these things and show kind of diagrams or whatever of worst case scenarios. Mm-hmm. So you kind of are like expecting that, and then you don't see like, the average or the best case scenarios.
Yeah, the success stories, or
exactly.
how people have navigated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're there. It's a lot of times people in that situation that are making that decision mm-hmm. to terminate a pregnancy are likely it's just a fear,
definitely
fear or unknown, or just even maybe misinformation that they're basing that on. Not that they wouldn't maybe still come to that decision, but they're mm-hmm. at least doing it in a way that's not even fully informed.
Definitely, likely, and I think I totally understand that fear, and fear of the unknown, because I had that when we received her diagnosis. Mm-hmm. It's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
We were told she may not potty train, all this stuff. And then I started talking to parents that have kids with Cri Du Chat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, a lot of this information is not accurate. Mm-hmm. These kids are amazing. Yeah. They're walking. They have words. They're, doing things that the internet will say is not possible. Yeah. It just, it's so sad. And the reason why I think there's so much misinformation about it, and honestly, you have to educate a lot of doctors on health issues related to it, because it's so rare that they're not familiar.
Exactly.
And I think that's the case with a lot of the information out there. A lot of the studies, like the case studies that they've done, are from the 70s, mm-hmm. which that's just not true anymore.
Sure.
There was one thing that I saw on there, and it was like 90% of people with Cri Du Chat do not live until age 1. And then I was like, that's not true, like, whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then I saw it was from 1975. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and there's been so many other things too. I'm assuming that in the medical field that come along where the process of diagnosing and even the different things that can be diagnosed are so much different in that amount of time that it could be even what the statistics from 1975, how many of those cases were actually Cri Du Chat versus other things that are maybe lumped in that haven't been determined yet. There's so many different things that shift in the medical field so quickly that it's hard to rely on stuff like that. So since Shiloh's been born, obviously that came with a lot of transition and adjustments. How has life shifted for you guys as a couple and as a family since then? Good, bad, or ugly?
What do you think?
I think that we have a whole lot more meaning and purpose in our lives, which is amazing. I mean, not that we didn't before, but she's opened our eyes up to so many wonderful things and wonderful people that we've gotten to meet that we wouldn't have without her. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's brought immeasurable joy to everyone she encounters. I mean, she's a lot of people's favorite baby, not to be biased, but she brings this like magnetic joy. Mm-hmm. And I think people are I mean, they just love it. In terms of hard parts, I mean, we do spend a ton of time at the hospital. Mm-hmm. Our NICU stay was 122 days, and then we were readmitted 3 more times for about like a month, and we'll be going back in April to figure out an issue with her airway.
And so she's 9 months old right now. We're recording this.
She is about 8.5 months old right now. Yeah.
And we are early March when we're recording this. So she spent half of her life in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. She has. And I also want people to know that people that spend so much time in the hospital, kids, that doesn't mean that their life is, I mean, it's not ideal. I'll be real there. But they do have quality of life. And it's definitely hard to be in the hospital for a long period of time. It's super hard. But you can get through it, and we got through it. And people that come alongside you and just prop you up are amazing. Yeah. But yeah, we spend a lot of time in the hospital. That's definitely a change. I know so much more about the medical world than I ever thought I would. Even with doctors as parents, I know more than them on her issues, actually. And so, I mean, our whole apartment right now is devoted to Shiloh. We have all of her equipment in here and, you know, all that, G-tube feedings, oxygen, high flow, all that.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say. Surprisingly, it's kind of brought a whole lot of more organization to our lives, I feel like, because we're on so many schedules kind of throughout the entire day. You know, we start her feeds at 5 p.m. They run till 11 a.m. the next day, and you have to switch them out every 4 hours. We have all of our things in little cubbies, you know, all organized, and we kind of have all of our appointments that we have every week or whatever. Yeah. And we just have a lot more structure to our lives, which is a good thing, but also is extremely busy and kind of stressful at the same time. So you don't have as much leisure time to kind of, for us to be able to go out and do things. No. And that's another thing, you know, with, you know, medically complex child is we can't go to the zoo or Disneyland or the movies or whatever that you would do maybe with a normal baby, especially since we've gotten out during flu season. Like, no, we're not going out into public spaces as much, and we're kind of more, you know, just at home or at families' places. Yeah. So,
Katie, you had touched on the hospital stays, and I think one of the things that you had mentioned in an earlier conversation was that, you know, that being in the hospital doesn't mean that our life is bad. Yeah. That there are still a lot of amazing stuff and beauty during those times, I think was the words that you'd put. Give us an example of what beauty you've experienced in the midst of such a difficult journey.
Oh man, so much. We've met so many amazing people along the way. Sorry.
It's all right. Take your time.
We shared a room at one point with this little boy who was dying. He had a fatal disease. And his wonderful dad. And they were just so kind. And we would have never have made that connection had we not been in the hospital at the time and admitted together. And Shiloh and that little boy were the only babies that were not sick, like with a virus or anything. So they were roomed together, and it was just like a screen separating us two. And so that dad and me had conversations throughout the day because we were always there next to our kids. Whoa, sorry.
It's all right.
And that's something that I will just treasure forever. You wouldn't get to do that if we were not admitted, but just the relationships you make. The nurses are incredible. We've had so many amazing nurses that we're still friends to this day. And they still follow Shiloh's story. Everything like that. And, you know, you get all the therapies that come in, too, and then you meet those people. Music therapy, that was the best one. she had a baby maraca, and that girl was so positive and just brought such a joy. And then just in the suffering, you learn things that you would not if you didn't go through that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does.
So a lot of things that we went through, I think, we're not the same people that we were before, and I would never trade that for anything at all. So
you mentioned that it's almost forced you to like accelerate growing up. Like there's been a certain level of growing up abruptly and rapidly.
yes,
And then also you mentioned before kind of the purpose and meaning that Shiloh has brought, and part of this journey, I'm sure, and even some of the suffering has brought, like has helped shape some of that.
yeah.
Colton, how do you think this journey has shaped your just general perspective on life and other people?
It's just, I think definitely, kind of made me more thankful for kind of everyday life and, just all the, I don't know, activities and pleasures that we kind of are able to have for ourselves. Because yeah, like we've been able to see in being inpatient or in the NICUs, there's so many people who are stuck there for so long that don't have the same freedoms or whatever it might be that we have. And so it's definitely helped me kind of, I guess, like take every day one at a time, you know, not looking too far ahead and not kind of getting caught up necessarily with every single day, but kind of just looking at every day and finding the best parts of it and in every situation, and just, I don't know, all the different people you might be able to meet in circumstances that you would never have been able to see before. And it's helped us kind of reach out and branch out into communities and organizations or whatever that we wouldn't have ever even known existed. So I think it's just opened our lives up to so much more that we can just find joy in and everything. Yeah, I don't know.
Katie, what about you?
What was the question
Oh,
again?
how has just the overall general shaped how you view life and other people, and maybe even specifically people that are on people of different abilities?
Yes. Well, I was heavily involved in the disabled community back home. My oldest brother has autism, so he lives with my parents, and he's brought, I mean, he is, again, pure joy for the most part. I mean, he has some sass too.
Right. That's part of life, yeah.
But I actually rode the ESC bus with him growing up, and I got to meet all of his friends. I went to most of his events. He was like the most popular kid at school because, I mean...
So you got to be the most popular kid's sister.
I did.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was very involved. I have a lot of friends with Down syndrome. So when we got that, I wasn't sad at all about it. And we actually want to adopt a kid with Downs in the future, but, it was never like a sad thing because I have a ton of friends with Down syndrome, a bunch of different diagnoses. And I was exposed to it since birth. I mean, I know nothing different at all. They're just, I mean, everyone is just a person to me. I don't really see the diagnosis so much. I mean, it's part of you, but for me, you're just you.
Right.
Exactly.
So in that sense, I was prepared.
Yeah, you were as equipped as anyone. Yeah.
Yes, and I had I taught a dance class for little girls with special needs. And I did a whole photo shoot for little girls with special needs. So I was, again, just a God thing. But
you've just experienced a love of that community at a brand new level.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I will say my eyes have been open to the medical community, medical complexities. I've never had to do a G-tube before, never had to put oxygen on someone. So all of that is very new, and it opened my eyes to the whole medical complexity community. I've met so many wonderful people through that. And again, how it's changed my life and my outlook on life. I really try not to take a day for granted because, we never know how much time we'll have. And that was something that my eyes were not open to before her because I had such a lack of control over the situation. It was literally all in God's hands because I had no control over what was going to happen. And so my eyes have really been open to, like Colton said, taking each day, one day at a time, not taking things for granted, and getting joy out of mundane experiences, like mundane life. I think a lot of people try to do something like great and like extraordinary and whatever, but there's like beauty in just being at home and just going through your typical day. Because I think those are the things that I'll look back on, and most of the beautiful memories will be from the mundane days.
Right.
So
yeah. You guys, you mentioned how you got married. Was it junior year of college? Is that right?
Yes.
And so you started your marriage young, and marriage just in general is an adjustment. Can be difficult, especially those first 1 or 2 years. And then in the middle of that, you went through a journey that you really hadn't planned on.
Yeah.
And so, Colton, I want to ask you this first. Yeah. What have you learned about Katie through this journey that you didn't know before?
Oh, man. I've been able to see a lot more strength than I had seen previously in her, because we hadn't been through anything extremely difficult yet. We had, like we had spoken about before, the whole stroke issue, but that wasn't on the same level as kind of this at all, like especially emotionally,
Sure.
And that was only a 3-day span or whatever it was. But I've been able just to see so much more vulnerability from her than even I could have beforehand, and just a new kind of love that's just sprouted out of her from Shiloh and everything. And I think I don't know. Yeah. She's just wonderful, amazing in every way.
Katie, what about you? What have you learned?
How am I going to top that?
That's not hard.
I have learned that Colton is, he's a rock. While I'm emotionally like hysterical, he's just very level-headed, but very soft and caring. The stuff we went through some of it was extremely, extremely challenging. And he just got through it and, was working and is still working, obviously, while we're going through all this. And he does all of Shiloh's nighttime care after he gets home from work. And how many people would get home from a full day's work and then go on night shift? It's unreal. So, he's just the most caring their dad that you could possibly be. And exceeded all my expectations. So.
That's awesome. You guys make a pretty powerful team.
Thank you.
And I know you know how blessed you are to have Shiloh in your lives, but you're blessed to have each other.
Definitely.
And definitely Shiloh is blessed to have you guys. Is there anything else that you would want to cover that we haven't talked about?
Oh, man. I think we covered most of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Really anything else specific that...
Well, you guys did awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know this is, it's sometimes hard to sit down and talk about yourselves and talk about what you've been through. But it means a lot to us that you would kind of share your story with us and with our community. But to also know that there will be people that listen to this that are on, either they have a family member that's going through something similar, or they are themselves going through something similar. And to hear a mom say, what I found at the hospital from the doctors is so much different than this community I've connected with. And it really just blasts open the doors of hope.
Yes.
And that's what we believe that sharing your story can do, is that it takes what's delivered in a vacuum and oftentimes with a negative spin and opens it up into, you may have some challenges that you have to go through, but here's, like you mentioned, here's the beauty, here's a glimpse into the beauty that can be found in the midst of really difficult seasons. And so it means a lot that you guys would share your story with us. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
If you'd like to join us in shouting love for this family, visit our website, goshout.love, to support Shiloh through the purchase of a t-shirt, a tumbler, a hat, or other items, and every item sold in June will be used to purchase much-needed therapy equipment for Shiloh. Now, you can also start a subscription and shout love every month, and if you choose to do that now, you will receive a free Go Shout Love Campfire mug while supplies last. No need for a coupon code. Just add the subscription and the mug will be in your cart as well, again, while supplies last. Please take a second to rate and review, and then even share this podcast with a friend or someone who has a child with a diagnosis, or someone who you think would be blessed by a conversation like this. Again, a warm-hearted thank you to Colton and Katie for sharing. I hope this episode blessed you in listening to it as much as it did us in putting it together. Stay tuned for more great conversations coming up. We are very excited to be pressing on as we continue to feature families and have important discussions that surround these medical journeys and the lives affected by them. We couldn't do it without all of you, who are incredible at making a difference every time you join us as we all together go shout love. Thank you.